In today's stats preview, I'm going to give you all the key data you need to make the best decisions ahead of double game week 34. Diving straight in, we are going to take a look at which players have been performing the best in terms of FPL points over the past 5 game weeks. Now, this is being recorded while the Chelsea game is taking place, so Cole Palmer has just kicked off, so he's going to get potentially some more points than this, pick up some more goals and assists, but nobody is going to beat him in terms of being the best player over the past 5 game weeks for him. 5 goals, 1 assist, super impressive data as well, 40 points picked up. Has played a game less than everybody else on this list. I think it really shows how important he's been to Chelsea this season and how much of a great asset he's going to be for future game weeks coming up, with 2 double game weeks coming up for Chelsea. Moving on to Alexander Isak. Now, I think he would be a very popular pick this week if it wasn't for the double game weeks, but I still think he's a quality pickup. Crystal Palace for Newcastle, not the worst fixture in the world, and then some absolutely ridiculous fixtures to close out the season with a double in 37 as well. Absolutely no-brainer after this double game week for me to go and pick up Alexander Isak. Now, the other 3 players, I feel like no one owns in the game. Very, very low ownership amongst all these players. We spoke about Chris Wood last week. Obviously, he didn't score again this week, so I think he's potentially going to fade out. Morgan Gibbs-White as well has been very consistent, as you can see. 34 points picked up for him over the past few game weeks, but with no double game weeks coming up for Nottingham Forest. Some okay-ish fixtures in there, the likes of Everton, Sheffield United and Burnley. Some okay fixtures, but again, probably not a player I'm going to be recommending with, doubles in 34, 37, 35. He doesn't have any of those, and the fixtures are okay on their own, but it's just not worth it in my personal opinion when you've got other players doubling or with even better fixtures than those. So again, both of the Forest boys, I think we can avoid. I think, if you have owned them for this time period, excellent, well done. I probably wouldn't recommend selling them. They do have some good fixtures, but they don't have any doubles. So that is the downside of going for any of these players. Now, Bruno Fernandes, on the other hand, is a player that briefly caught my eye last week when taking a look at the data. And now that I'm seeing, what he performed against Bournemouth, 2 goals on penalties as well, entering this top 5 point scoring bracket as well. Sheffield United this week for Manchester United, so even if you're not on a free hit, that's a pretty good game week. Then it's Burnley Palace, the double with Arsenal and Newcastle, and then it is Brighton to finish the season as well. So some really, really tasty fixtures in there. And with Mohamed Salah's form taking a little bit of a dip, Son not looking at the races as well. You've got the likes of what to do with Foden, KDB, all these other players. Maybe Bruno's the one. He's pretty guaranteed in terms of his minutes as well. He is going to play 90 minutes or close to 90 minutes every single week. He's on penalties and picking up some really, really good underlying data and points to go with it. So might be a player we need to start considering over the next few weeks. And maybe if you get in early on him, he could be a super differential for you this season. So those are the top 5 point scoring players over the past 5 game weeks. Let me know if you're thinking about potentially bringing any of them in this week. Moving on to team data over the past 5 game weeks. On the top, we do have the worst defences in the league, and on the bottom, we do have the best attacks in the league. And I feel this was a really useful tool to look at last week, as it did kind of inform my decision to play Dominic Solanke against Manchester United rather than Garnacho. And that move worked out because, Dominic Solanke, he got the goal. He got 1 bonus point as well. Could have had a maybe dubious penalty right at the end as well, but it was because of the data and looking at all this XG conceded and his probability of scoring. It did inform my decisions. It made me make a better decision. So hopefully we can pick something out of this today in the video, looking at the data. So again, United are bottom for XG conceded, having played 1 game less than everybody else on this list, bar Brighton. But in terms of their fixtures coming up, you would expect maybe to see a little bit of an increase. My only concern, my only kind of positive note to maybe take out of this, if you're on a free hit or maybe looking to, you're dead ending your team into 35 and wildcarding out of it, Sheffield United players might not be the worst thing in the world. They've got Burnley, who, are down there for the season for XG conceded. Then they've got Manchester United as well. Obviously, with this poor defensive record, you could see them going and at least scoring a goal. And you feel it would be a player like Ben Brereton Diaz or Ollie McBurney. Ben Brereton Diaz is a player I did recommend on my free hit. I've currently got him in my free hit draft as well. His Premier League record since joining the club as well is pretty good. 8 games, 4 goals. So that definitely could be something we want to take advantage of. Obviously, Luton, pretty much expected to be. Spurs were absolutely battered this week, and it doesn't bode well in terms of maybe going for one of their defenders for the double game weeks coming up. Maybe, you know, even though they have got 2 fixtures, it might be worth considering it because they defensively have been a bit leaky, as you can see, over the past 5 game weeks. West Ham on here, interestingly, as well. No doubles coming up for them, so you do feel maybe if you have got the likes of Areola or any of their defenders, probably worth looking to shift off of those. Moving on to the best attacks in the league. Surprisingly, Liverpool still up here as one of the best attacks, despite not scoring against Crystal Palace. Still, it is favouring them. You know, they are creating the opportunities, they're getting them. Very, very good from them. Obviously, with the double game week coming up, probably suggesting worth investing in 2 attackers rather than doubling up on the defence. Interestingly as well, Liverpool haven't kept a clean sheet in the Premier League since game week 21. So again, if you are on a free hit, might be worth going for the likes of Salah, Diaz, Jota, maybe Darwin Núñez, rather than going for the double up of maybe like Virgil van Dijk, Robertson, Trent in that regard. City, obviously they're going to be up here. Newcastle, obviously they've been putting some teams to the sword over the past few game weeks, and like I said, with the positive fixtures coming up, I definitely think it is worth investing in a few of their assets for the upcoming fixtures as well. And surprisingly, Fulham up here. So maybe if you have got a team that does play against Fulham in the next few weeks, it might be potentially worth, you know, considering not playing one of your defenders. I'm looking at that Liverpool game in double game week 34 as well. So if you are on a free hit, probably, you know, maybe one to consider, or if you're maybe thinking about a transfer this week, maybe Virgil van Dijk or Robertson or Trent might not be the ideal ones, because you could very easily see Fulham scoring with this good underlying data that they've got going at the moment and the opportunities and goals they are scoring in games. But quickly moving on to the next set of team data, nearly forgot it, it is here, it is clean sheets, expected clean sheets for the double game week. Interestingly, Liverpool are up there. They are second in this list. So maybe, you know, that last point wasn't entirely relevant in terms of Draft Hounds data, but I still think it's personally, like, you know, a good kind of metric to use to kind of judge whether or not we should maybe be looking at it. 36 and 38, 36 being the Fulham one, so they're not overly confident that Liverpool will keep a clean sheet against Fulham. Interesting though, Arsenal are top, so, you know, I'm currently sat on double Arsenal defence. I think this gives me a lot more confidence to go and make that move as well with my free hit, because if they're top of this with a 50% chance in their first game against Wolves and then a 38% chance against Chelsea as well, is looking very likely that they should keep at least 1 clean sheet rather than 0 over the game week. So I definitely think the Arsenal double defence is looking very good in terms of the free hit, or maybe if you're on the transfers as well. Some other interesting teams in here, Everton and Crystal Palace. I know they're going to be quite popular players on the free hit as well. I've seen a few people potentially having Jordan Pickford, so again, might be a nice little tidy pickup on the free hit. Crystal Palace, I've seen people with Dean Henderson and Muniz, who I currently have, but those numbers do look a little bit skeptical. I know Palace have got 2 home games, so I'm not entirely sure why it is so low and why they don't rate Crystal Palace to keep, you know, any clean sheets or a low probability of clean sheets in either game. Is a little bit sus, but we'll have to wait and see how that one goes. Interestingly, Manchester United up here so high, I think they would have probably been a little bit lower in my personal opinion. I guess they're just judging Sheffield United based on their season's data, but over the past 5 game weeks, like I said, they are bottom for XG conceded. Sheffield United as well have had improved performances, not only in terms of on-field displays, in terms of goals, but in terms of their underlying data as well. Moving on to the flip side, teams down the bottom that you probably should be looking to avoid this week. Obviously, Tottenham with no game. Fulham and Brighton, pretty self-explanatory there. Any Arsenal assets that you do have, probably worth giving those a miss as well. And the rest, like I said, they are pretty self-explanatory. Moving on to expected points, I think this is a really good model to help you identify which players you should be looking to target and maybe help you make that captaincy decision as well. As you can see, for expected points, Salah and Diaz leading the way above the rest. Martin Odegaard, probably that high because of his minutes over the past few weeks as well. But, you know, if you are thinking about who to captain this week, Salah probably is still going to be one of the most captain players this week. He still is the no-brainer option if you are looking from it, you know, just in terms of fixture-wise. Drafthound's predicted points model as well does have him top. Interestingly, Luis Diaz sat in second, so a lot of people on free hits. I would be recommending him off the back of Drafthound's data. Interestingly, Odegaard and Havertz both above Bukayo Saka. He's all the way down there at 8.7, so maybe something to consider. Maybe it is worth potentially going out with Bukayo Saka, not having him in the free hit teams. Does potentially offer that argument to potentially go against going with Saka if these guys are doing so well as well. I think it will be down mainly to expected minutes. Also, probably the fact that Saka hasn't only got one goal, in his past 5 game weeks. Another interesting one is Ben White is surprisingly higher than Gabriel and Saliba, which to me doesn't make sense, seeing as Gabriel and Saliba are more likely to play more minutes. Maybe it's because Ben White's been getting substituted off early, locking in those clean sheets, where Gabriel and Saliba are seeing out the full 90. I do think personally he might be a little bit of a minutes risk in my personal opinion, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. I think, like I said, I still would prefer Gabriel and Saliba, and I'm actually quite shocked to see them as low as they are. Now, a few people as well on my transfer targets video were asking me about Diego Jota. He's on here with 8.9 predicted points. I still think I would prefer going for Luis Diaz, especially off the back of seeing this Drafthound model. I just don't think Diego Jota is going to see, you know, a large proportion of minutes over this double game week. Not to mean that, you know, Luis Diaz won't see some benchings or some early substitutions. I just think his minutes are more secure than Diego Jota, just coming back from a longer term injury. Interestingly, another name on here is Dominic Solanke. He is up there for XG for this season. He's sat in 3rd place over the course of this season. 17 Premier League goals as well, 9.7 points. So if you're definitely looking for a forward, I would be highly recommending him because he's extremely high on the predicted points model. Moving on to the chance of scoring. As you can tell right at the top, it is of course going to be the 2 Liverpool lads that we spoke about in the last section. Up there for predicted points, up there for chances of scoring in this game week as well. So no real surprises in that one. Dominic Solanke, 3rd on this list, is exceptional. He was up there last week for percentage chance of scoring against Manchester United. He's up there again, so can he do it again? I think he could. I definitely think he could be in the conversation for captaincy as well. So stick around for the end when we will be talking about potential captains for this week to potentially go for. And I think Dominic Solanke has to be in that bracket of conversation. A player we've not mentioned in today's video is Erling Haaland. He's quite high on this list as well, 61% for him. No double game week for Manchester City, but as we saw in the team section, Brighton are 5th for the 5th worst defence for XG conceded over the past 5 game weeks as well. So maybe advantage to non-free hitters with Erling Haaland this week. He has a high probability of scoring a goal. And, you know, the form that Manchester City are in as well, they're up there for XG over the past 5 game weeks. So definitely, you know, it could be advantage to non-free hitters going with Erling Haaland. Moving on to some other players on the list. I'm unsure why Rasmus Højlund is on here again. I get they've got Sheffield United, but form-wise, he's not been at the races. Alexander Isak at 41% as well. You know, obviously, if you're thinking about maybe going for a transfer just for a single game week player, I still think he would be one of the top names I would be looking to identify this game week. Ivan Toney down the bottom. It seems like he's maybe fallen out with people at Brentford and not going to see minutes. So if you do have him, I think it probably is the wise move to potentially switch away from him to somebody like Isak, maybe Darwin Núñez as well if you do fancy going for a double game week player. And finishing up today's video, I thought we would take a look at captaincy because I feel it is quite open this week. We obviously indicated that Mohamed Salah probably is going to be the most captain player this week. He's got a double, very highly owned. You know, recent performances have put that into question and maybe some doubt as well. That Crystal Palace performance wasn't the best, but if we take a look at his underlying data, it's still pretty good and he's massively underachieving on that. So it may be, just a matter of time before, something clicks with him and that Liverpool side and he's back to cooking, because you can't keep producing the data that he's doing and not, getting the goals or getting the assists like he should be doing. So maybe this game week he could massively explode, and, maybe we're overthinking this captaincy and we should just be sticking with Mohamed Salah, because the data's definitely there. It's just the on-field kind of performances and the eye test. It's just not quite there from watching him. But if you want to, look at it from a data standpoint, I definitely think he does represent the best captaincy pick for this game week. He's up there for chance of scoring, up there for predicted points, and his data over the past 5 game weeks hasn't even been that bad. So from a data standpoint, I think he's the #1 captain. In terms of other captains, there are a few names obviously going to be floating around. Saka, obviously with the Arsenal double of Wolves and Chelsea, he'll definitely be in the contention as a secondary captain. But for me, I think his performances have definitely dipped off. 1 goal in the past 5 game weeks. The data is not quite there. And obviously with him having like this limp or like injury or kind of playing through something, I think that does make him a less valuable asset. And I would prefer going for Mohamed Salah over Saka. Solanke's on here, and I think he's going to be my differential captain for this week. I really, really like Dominic Solanke. I don't know if you can tell. I just got a little bit of a soft spot. Obviously, he was up there for predicted points and for chance of scoring as well in the last sections we did cover. His data, it's okay. It's all right. It's not too bad. But, I definitely could see him scoring at least 1 goal in the double. Aston Villa down there for XG conceded over the past 5 game weeks as well. So, that's probably why his chance of scoring is so high. 17 Premier League goals and is 3rd for XG amongst all players over the course of the season. In terms of some other differential captains, maybe you don't want to go for Mohamed Salah or can't get to Mohamed Salah. I think Luis Diaz could be one of those options as well. He's been in okay-ish form. As you can see, his data is pretty alright, 2 XG. The expected assist is a lot higher, the highest on this list as well. So probably a little bit unfortunate to come away with 1. Again, he was leading the other models as well for chance of scoring and predicted points, and is up there as the 2nd highest scoring player over the past 5 game weeks of all the 5 players that I have allocated here for captaincy. Now, the last one's going to be a rogue one. It is going to be Bruno Fernandes. Obviously, the 1 game, so you're only getting 1 kind of roll at the dice with this one. But, ladies and gentlemen, as I pointed out with Bruno Fernandes, he's been doing exceptionally well over the past 5 game weeks. The data is definitely there. He didn't feature on any of the previous sections, so maybe that's something to consider. But I definitely think he is definitely a player we need to be considering for bringing in. In terms of captaincy, probably not. This week, I would be favouring a double game week player. I think the sensible option is Salah. The obvious differentials are probably going to be Solanke and Luis Diaz. So for me, I just wanted to put him on here because obviously I wanted to have this conversation about his recent performances and maybe why we should start considering looking at him as a potential option. But I think it's a little bit too soon for captaincy. But maybe one to consider when Manchester United do double in game week 37. Thank you very much for watching today's video, ladies and gentlemen. Massively appreciated by me as always. If you do have any questions, get them in the comments section below. But thank you very much for watching today's video, and good luck this game week.